Welcome in. Thanks so much for joining me again. So, I'd like to discuss something that I talk about quite often with those I mentor as well as in classes that I teach regularly. And this is the attitude or the approach to our spiritual practice and meditation of becoming a student of mind. So, this is something I've sort of developed just out of my own practice, of just ways of working with my own practice, trying to get out of relying on techniques and more on relying on a process or a journey, or what we call in traditional Buddhism a path. And more as I've reflected on it in my own practice, it's more enjoyable when I take this approach of just becoming a student of my mind, right? Not that my mind knows exactly what to do all the time or even has good answers. But I guess another way to think of this is becoming an explorer or an observer of mind, right? Which we're doing in meditation. And the more we meditate, the more we can do that throughout the day. It doesn't just have to be on the meditation cushion. I think this is one huge incentive for driving a more regular formal practice, because just like going to the gym and getting more healthy and growing our muscles, we can actually grow the muscle of awareness, which is a natural quality of mind that I talk about quite a bit in my content. And it's just, how do you say it? Something that's talked about a lot in Buddhism, because that's mainly what we're connecting to and cultivating in meditation, of course, based on a motivation of compassion, altruism, and love. So anyways, there's some things to unpack here, but I just wanted to start out with the main point. This is something I really encourage those I work with, as well as in my own practice, just becoming an explorer of mind, becoming an observer, a student of mind. So what is mind? I think, those of you out there who study Buddhism more regularly, you know what mind is from that perspective. But normally in the Western world, we don't think of mind as its own thing. We think of brain, right? And so I'm not going to get into a whole discussion of is mind, brain, etc. Not my expertise. But I will say in Buddhism, we do think of them as distinct. Meaning, of course, mind, when it's in a human body, relies on the human brain, but mind itself is not brain, right? The brain is more like a muscle that the mind relies on. So generally in Buddhism, we would say the mind is something immaterial. We let's just call it consciousness here, like that, the fact that we're conscious, that we can be aware, that we can think, that we can know. This is all based on something natural. The natural vitality of the mind, the way the mind just is, what we're born with. Just like our biology, we have the non-material or immaterial, biology wouldn't be the right word here, but biology of mind, right? So mind just is there, right, on a relative level. And so to make it more kind of digestible for our discussion here of what are we actually becoming explorer of then, it's all of our experience that's not necessarily a physical experience, right? So even this gets into our sense perceptions. So we have, our sense of smell, taste, touch, sight, hearing, etc. All of these senses get interpreted by mind, right? Of course, the sound itself, there can be some debate if that's mind. Different Buddhisms would say different things, but nonetheless, the fact is they do come through kind of one doorway, which is the interpreter, right? The mind, which judges what to do with that sound or not do, sight, smell, whatever. And then, of course, interprets it, and then, of course, sometimes makes lots of stories, lots of thoughts, lots of judgments. I'm not saying that's bad necessarily, right? We hear a car horn and we're crossing the street, and we need to know, do I need to move? Right? What do I need to do to be safe? So sometimes judgment is helpful, or we could say that's discernment, right? Skillful discernment. But anyway, so mind is this filter. Mind is what filters out our experience, what helps us to think, what helps us to know, what helps us to in meditation be aware, etc. In Tibetan Buddhism, we usually have this definition of mind as the relative mind as clear and knowing, clear and knowing. So the knowing capacity is not so difficult. It just means that we can know things, right? We can know there's a sound, we can know there's a sight, we can know there's a thought, etc. The clear part is the interesting part, which is that mind itself is very similar to a clear and limpid water that can reflect anything. So it just means that mind can reflect, right? So we can, of course, we see color and interpret it because of the eyes and other mechanisms, and of course the brain helps with that. But also mind is part of that. This consciousness element is also part of that process, right? So, that's what I was saying. So, because mind is clear, anything can be reflected in it. The color of brown, the color of green, white, etc. Just as some examples, right? So, part of this we can explain in words, and I mean, Buddhism has a really rich tradition of describing mind and talking about it in great detail. I think one of the most advanced systems to date. And yet it's very subjective. This was all discovered through meditators subjectively going into their own minds and reporting back what they're seeing, other meditators repeating the same process, etc. So they could see similarities, right? And so it's very similar to us when we're becoming a student of mind, an explorer, an observer. We need to have the tools to bear witness to mind, right? And what's the greatest tool to do that? Meditation, right? And specifically awareness, right? So awareness, as I said, is also a quality of mind. And awareness you can think of as a double knowing. It's sort of like you have the natural knowing, and then you can know that you're knowing. For instance, a car horn can sound. You know it's a car horn, right? Because you've heard it before. You don't have to think it's a car horn, but then you could also know that you're knowing it. And that's what we call awareness. Maybe an easier way to think of it, it's just a sense of observation, a sense of watchfulness, right? And we're all born with this because it's part of mind. And yet we don't all cultivate this because normally meditation practice, or at least Buddhist, what we call meditative awareness or shamatha practice, it's specifically born out of a need to connect with this type of awareness more, this natural quality of awareness, and become more familiar with it, right? And basically cultivate it. I said earlier, like grow it, like, how we would kind of grow a muscle. You could think of it like that. I don't think awareness itself grows. So, I mean, don't take me literally when I say that. It's not like awareness grows, but our connection to it, our knowing of it, our familiarity with it grows, right? And we just see awareness is something so useful, right? Because all of our actions come out of either awareness or unawareness. And when we're unaware, we're not aware of our actions, and we can do lots of harmful things. We can make choices that aren't so skillful for ourselves and others, etc. And so when we're cultivating awareness, we're cultivating skillfulness. We're cultivating a way to see the mind and know the mind. And as I said, when there's a motivation of wanting to become a student of mind, we're also staying really curious. That's why I like this as well. So the meditation practice, our mindfulness or shamatha practice, it's not just becoming a technique to calm us down. We realize calm is useful because we're grounded and we're in the body, and there's more space to familiarize with awareness and familiarize with the mind. It's useful in that way. But in and of itself, it's not that useful for what I'm talking about, right? Because we could also use calm as a way to check out. And then we're not really becoming an explorer or student of mind. We're kind of we're becoming like a little bit like a zombie, Which again, I'm not trying to insult you if you like that. It's just, I'm discussing here like a little bit more of a larger purpose of how we could use our meditation practice. And for me, although it's really hard, it's challenging to do what I'm talking about, it's quite joyful because we just start to see, I finally have some efficacy and agency, over my life, where I don't know about for some of you, whether you're new to meditation or been doing it for a long time. When I first started, that was one of the biggest things that it just sold me on this whole thing was like, wow, I can have more agency in my life, right? How to work with my emotions, how to work with my mind, how to work with my thoughts, how to change my behaviors even, to more skillful things, more skillful behaviors. So of course, all of this is really challenging because some of our habit patterns and behaviors are really, really stubborn, and we like them too sometimes, even if they are causing, somewhat some harm, right, for ourselves. We sometimes like junk food. Like we all love junk food because it tastes really great. So it's a difficult habit to break. It's just as an example. So anyways, another benefit to this attitude or approach of, engaging in meditation and the study of Dharma to become a student of mind or an explorer of mind is, as I said, this sense of curiosity and wonder, this sense of like, okay, I don't need to have it all figured out. I don't even really need to change necessarily. Of course, we all want that, and that's a good measure of practice, how we're doing, etc. But it's not the starting place. The starting place is becoming a curious, open person, right? And in the beginning, our mind is kind of like a wild monkey, right? It's jumping everywhere and creating a mess and, is unruly. And so in the beginning, we're just working with taming that a little bit, just, giving the monkey something to do, watch the breath, stay here, come back. Oh, no, okay, come back, when it wanders, etc. And then eventually, as we start to tame it, we're going to have this ability to look at the mind throughout the day. I recommend just really short moments, meaning like, just look back at your mind, look at what it's doing, just become watchful of your thinking process for a moment, or, let's try it in small little doses, right? I remember a long time ago when I first started practicing, it was, at first it was more like I would catch it later. Like it would be like 10 minutes later. And then I'd be like, oh man, I just had all those weird thoughts, or, oh man, that's what influenced me to, do this or whatever. Or, so it was very unconscious, and I would notice later. And then slowly it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. Right. And this is really, I guess we could say, one kind of measure of our practice is the time between awareness of something and something happening becomes shorter until it becomes more simultaneous, right? So this is a good incentive to practice, I think. And again, why? It's not for becoming a dictator over our thoughts. It's so we can see more, and we can start to see their nature, and we could start to open, we could start to develop more compassion towards our human experience, others. And then, of course, we can start to liberate ourselves, right? Which is the point. So liberation comes through seeing. Liberation comes through knowing. Liberation comes through understanding the nature of something, how it's functioning, right? So, we can see this in just other elements of life that are less abstract. An engineer gets really good at designing something because they know it in and out. They've worked with it so much, and they know its parts, they know its mechanisms, they know what's possible. So we can do this with mind, right? And so this is where meditation is, the various techniques of meditative awareness, they become so helpful, right? It's not getting good at the technique. It's about using the technique to become an explorer, a student of mind. So I think that's all I want to say on this topic, but just encouraging you to reflect more on this if this is helpful. I hope it's insightful for just, maybe making this a motivation for your practice. For me, at some point, I don't know when this was, but a while ago, it just sort of changed everything into thinking of it this way. Because if I think of it in another way, I notice I get stuck in mechanisms of trying to control what I like and don't like, right? Or very goal-oriented thinking and a lot of perfectionism. So this is one way that I've found to sort of interrupt those behaviors and make it more about curiosity and openness. I guess you could say like wonder and awe even, of just seeing, wow, the mind is so vast and so strange at times, and also so beautiful at times, right? So, yeah, I encourage you to work with this. Let me know if you do. You can always reach out to me at scotttusa.com on my website, or if you're watching on YouTube, please comment, give it a like if you want. It just lets me know if this kind of content is appreciated or needed. So that's it. Wishing you all well in your practice and life, and thanks so much.